Hello there, this is the Bookkeeping Master on YouTube. Welcome to this video. I recently uploaded a new Sage 50 tutorial. You can go and watch that, it's on my YouTube channel. Sage recently changed the design and made their software look a bit modern. The layout of the software is very similar to older versions, but I thought it's about time that I recreated or remade that series because it's very old now. My original series, the sound quality, the visual quality wasn't that great, and as mentioned, the software has been updated. So if you haven't seen that new series, then go and watch it. It's on my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to give some tax planning tips. This does not count as tax planning or tax advice. I'm not giving you advice, just some practical tips that can help you with your tax planning. If you are a sole trader, if you own a small company and tax bills are always shocking, where am I going to get the money to pay that tax? Do I have enough time to pay this tax? Hopefully this video will help you. Just a handful of practical tips that I found useful in my businesses and also that I pass on to clients of mine. The first tip that I'll give you, just click on here. So tip 1, I'm doing this one-handed, so you have to excuse how slow the writing is. But tip 1 is the bookkeeping of the business or the company. If you have a bookkeeper or an accountant that keeps the books, if your accounts are kept up to date, if they're done on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis, you should have some sort of idea of the profitability of the business. And from that, you'll be able to get some sort of estimated figure of what your tax liability is going to be. It's a lot easier to plan for your tax payment if you know roughly how much that tax payment is going to be. You can also look at previous years. So if you've been trading for 5 years, you should know how much tax you've paid the last 5 years, and then you can kind of guesstimate what your tax is going to be for the current year. But going back to the tip, if your books are kept up to date, you should know round about the profitability of the business, especially if you keep your accounts on accounting software. You can create a P&L, a profit and loss sheet, at a click of a few buttons. So that's my first tip, is make sure your accounts are kept up to date. Now, going hand in hand with tip 1, tip 2 is to make sure that your accounts are handed to your accountant as quickly as possible. So depending on where you are in the world will depend on how much time you have from your year end to your tax payment. Here in the UK, it can range anywhere from about 9 months to 12 months. If you get your accounts to your accountant after the tax year or the financial year of the company, if they're done within 4, 6, 8 weeks, then you have a good 7, 8 months to make the tax payment. If you're like some business owners out there, you'll leave your accounts until there's a month left, a month before you receive some sort of fine or penalty. You rush your accounts to your accountant, you get your tax bill, and you realize you've got a chunk of tax to pay and you've only got 2 or 3 weeks to pay it. So my second tip, which is very similar to my first, I guess, is get your accounts to your accountant, that's your year-end accounts, as soon as possible. So once your financial year is over or the tax year is over, give those accounts to your accountant. If you don't have an accountant, get one. If you do the accounts yourself, then don't procrastinate and get the accounts done as soon as possible. It really helps you and allows more time to pay tax. My third tip is when you draw money out of the business, especially if you're a sole trader or a director, of a company, whenever you take money out of the company or draw money out of a business, set aside some cash for your tax payment. So if you draw £1,000, $1,000 out of your business or company, then set aside anywhere, I would say, from 10 to 20% of that for the tax payment to cover the tax on the money you've taken out of the business. Now, what I do is I have a savings account that's specifically for tax savings, if that makes sense. I don't know if the terminology is right on that, but every time I take money out of the business, I'll take 10 to 20% off that cash, put it in my savings account that's set aside for tax payments, and then that money's in there. So when I have my tax bill come through, I have this chunk of money that I've saved up throughout the year that I can use for my tax bill. Now, going hand in hand, 1 and 2 are very similar, 3 and 4 are very similar. If you have a limited company, I suggest you have some sort of business or company reserve account. So like a savings account. So as you're building cash in a company, set some of that aside into a reserve account for tax, corporation tax payments. Tip number 5 is to speak to your accountant. If you don't have an accountant, I suggest you look at getting one, because you can actually save on tax if you have an accountant. They may know some ways that you can save tax and reduce your tax bill, but they can also help you plan for tax payments. So if you're really stuck when it comes to paying your tax bill, then I suggest you speak to your accountant and see what advice they have for you. Now, point 6, and this is kind of a tip that I am hesitant to share with you, but if you're struggling to pay your tax, then speak to the tax authority. Here in the UK, that's HMRC. The tax body will be called all different things across the globe. But here in the UK, if you really can't pay your tax, you can phone HMRC, explain the situation, and they can extend deadlines for you. Now, I'm really hesitant to tell you that. The reason being, HMRC don't really like doing it. They're not very lenient, so you would only perhaps get a couple of extra weeks, a couple of extra months. And the thing is, it has a knock-on effect. If you put off tax too long, you may end up having to pay 2 tax years, or the tax for 2 tax years, very close together. So it's only putting off the inevitable. So I don't really like giving that tip, but some people are so stuck for cash that they need to speak to HMRC. And that's not really tax planning, but it's some sort of tip to help you in making your tax payments. So there's 6 tips there, pretty straightforward, nice, simple video. If anyone else has some tips that I haven't covered, put them in the section below so we all can share and learn from each other. If you're based in the UK, if you need an accountant, get in contact with me. I'm the bookkeeping master. Just go to my website and there's a page on outsourcing work to me. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like the video, please subscribe. And I have over 200 videos on this channel all about bookkeeping and accounting. So if this video has been beneficial, please go and watch some more.